The Lelit Bianca V3 is often considered the best dual boiler espresso machine on the market due to its remarkable performance. At least on paper, what this particular machine offers is truly exceptional in every way. Electric flow rate control, manual flow rate control, a dual boiler, a rotary pump, and all of that included for a really or relatively affordable price that won't break the bank. But does the Lelit Bianca actually deliver all of that? That's precisely what we've been looking into for weeks, even months. The final results. Had quite a bit of fun giving that a go. And I have to say, our team went absolutely crazy, working long hours on this test video and on creating the detailed short synopsis of the English and Spanish versions, which we have all linked below for you. But Michel, before we really delve in, a quick classification. The machine offers many useful functions at a relatively affordable price, which makes it quite appealing.
Absolutely. The Bianca is a dual boiler, features a rotary pump, and has a needle valve where you can manually adjust the flow rate. Various functions such as pre-infusion and low flow offer distinct control options. And you got all of this for just about 2,000 euros in Germany, whereas in Switzerland it's closer to about 2.5, not quite 2.3, 2.4. That's quite an impressive statement indeed.
That's a bold statement. And the question, of course, is whether that statement will end up in the cup. So, will we benefit from this as well? Does it taste just as good? Is the whole package really that extraordinary? We tested this extensively, Michel, and maybe this is a really good moment to put that into perspective again. You've also been waiting quite a long time to finally test this impressive machine. We're on it, we're definitely on it. But it takes time. It takes time because on the one hand, we're really looking at a lot of things, and on the other hand, because this machine with flow speed control gives us additional opportunities, like few machines we have tested so far. So that we can then carry out a test that we can stand by, where we can say this is our take on the machine, and then you can also compare it with other machines. For that, we simply need time. And yes, I don't know, it's been truly weeks, really weeks, not just weeks when the machine was present, but weeks we worked with it. Just the electricity protocol alone.
That was just the different levels with the boiler off and on. We revised the power protocol with Toby, making essential adjustments to improve its efficiency. That we can, for example, also properly categorize every single shot we brew in the machine. How much electricity does he need per machine? We will dive even deeper into that particular topic later on. Then with Thomas, I once told Thomas the joke, "You've seen Bianca more often than your girlfriend." That could have definitely worked well for individual weeks. But don't you worry at all, because Bianca is truly, incredibly a machine. He really spent a significant and considerable amount of time and effort working on that task together.
For example, we meticulously measure and record how long the espresso machine takes to warm up and be completely ready for use. And that simply means it needs to cool down for at least an entire day in between sessions. So then we check them after 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and 15 minutes. This is not very likely with VMAE 61 test groups like this particular one here. But that is the standard procedure. That means we really have to wait until the machines come back down, cooled down properly. When we test the temperatures, we make sure to have exactly the same water temperature at the back of the tank as well. That's one of those stories. And then we now do a protocol with the steam boiler on, with the steam boiler off, WBC protocol, our own temperature protocol. I think this time we have 7 or 8 temperature curves because we kept producing, and then of course we also looked at how the temperature behaves when the flow rate is different. So because this is now actually a function that we have here at hand. So maybe as a bit of context, that's why it sometimes takes a little longer and we just want to take our time. And yes, now we are here and I'm super happy that we can say today we have the impression of our LED Bianca and can tell you how we find the machine and many things we really find super. Speaking of super, if you like the video and watch our videos from time to time, we'd be happy if you subscribe to the channel, like the video, and if you want to support our work, we always buy these machines ourselves. It's also very important to us that we do it exactly that way, and we don't want to get paid by anyone for it. But you can support us by taking a look at our shop and perhaps trying out our delicious coffee, for example. There are the coffees that we also use in the videos. You can try them out if you feel like it. And then we can also cross-check, or you can compare how a coffee tastes to us. And of course, there are courses, an online course, and naturally many courses, both here in Switzerland and at our German academy. Just drop by, everything is linked below. But now, Michel, I'd say let's head on inside and begin with the external data and respective facts.
We have a dual boiler machine with a depth of 50 centimeters. With a portafilter, we're just under 60 centimeters. The 50 centimeters depth is measured when the water tank goes back. You also have the option to move it sideways, which is really useful for optimizing limited kitchen space. You just have to rearrange it briefly, but that generally goes relatively quickly. Then you have a height of 40 centimeters and a width of a little less than 30 centimeters. Additionally, you have a drip tray with a liquid capacity of almost 1 entire liter. That's quite large, so we can also position ourselves accordingly. You have a water tank capacity up to the maximum line of 2.39 liters, and you have many options to have the machine in other design variations as well, just with these wooden handles. However, at the same time, there are also models available in stylish black or elegant white.
Michael, going in. Yeah, edging, what do we have here? Such a shiny variant, every fingerprint shows.
Yes, David ordered it.
No, but with the black one and the white one, it's not that extreme.
This is the first thing I want to share with you. Most of you have seen a video from us before. They know that I'm a bit...
Could it perhaps be paranoia?
No, first of all, cleaning paranoia. Secondly, I also find certain design features just beautiful. And I would definitely choose to get this machine in either black or perhaps white, not in chrome, for 2 main reasons.
What about pink?
You could do it. Doesn't exist. You can easily paint it yourself for 2 very important reasons. I'm quite sure you all have a Benjamin at home, just like I do, who really likes to touch the machine. And if I have a Benjamin here, that's the first reason. The second reason, however, and I find this much, much more important, is a point of criticism for me that I have with those I find at the Lelit Mara.
Yes, it's distinctly tinny.
Exactly. Somehow you can still sense the weight of those 2,000 euros in all of this.
Yes, definitely. And above all, we must now say, where is Lelit obviously putting money into this? Maybe focus a little bit more on development and maybe a bit less on your sheet metal over here. But we really have to say, okay, what is truly more important to you now? It certainly doesn't compare to the highest quality, most elegant stainless steel machine we have ever seen in our entire experience. Yes, it is relatively thin, but there is an extreme amount of other stuff under the hood.
Yes, and as soon as you manage to get your hands on either the black or the white version, I find it incredibly striking and noteworthy. So, if you ever find the chance, we'll get to it later, why you absolutely need to buy the machine in a store. But if you ever find yourself going to the store and maybe both machines are standing right there, then just touch it and feel it. Now I just put some dents on it myself, but once this paint is on, it feels much more high quality, almost like a premium product you'd find in a high-end store. I find it incredibly valuable. So I'd only choose to buy the machines in black or white, as these colors best fit my overall aesthetic preferences.
Dear Michel, you've mentioned a few things now, and I would like to add something more. 2 observations. First off, we haven't tested the machine ourselves. So we actually have this particular machine quite often in our courses and have consistently looked at it again and again there. How do the machines of the people who have them work? We looked at the previous models and now we have a good overview. By the way, we bought the machine. And secondly, you just mentioned in passing, at home you have one. Well, yes, I mean, you have thus a... Let's leave it at that. I really like that we are at home here in our little film studio. We have a rotary pump. We can connect the machine to the mains water supply. We have a dual boiler, so 2 different boilers, one reserved for brewing and one for steaming milk.
By the way, we have a capacity of 0.8 liters for the espresso boiler, 1.5 liters for the steam boiler. We have already mentioned the water bank and the drip switch. Classic VMI 61 brewing group, you know it. That's pretty standard. And then there's this. Cardboard box included, with plenty of equipment.
Yes, a good tamper is included. The portafilters are nice. It fits well. We measured it too. What was the distance to the edge?
The distance to the edge was 0.4 millimeters. That's for comparison. We're just starting to gather some numbers, but the last 3 or 4 machines we tested were all around about 0.8 to 0.9, which is really attributable to the 0 because the 58.5, even though it says 58.55. So yes, it works like that more or less, and it finishes quite well. The high quality design is evident, You have a bottomless portafilter included, which is great. You also get the wastewater to water kit, an essential for maintenance. Additionally, there are some cleaning agents included, which is always useful. And a cloth is also included for your convenience. There's actually a complete set included with it.
Michel, these are indeed the external conditions we're dealing with. Maybe very briefly, could you explain how it looks when it comes to dealing with sharp edges? What else did you notice while handling? The drip tray comes out easily and snaps back in place without much effort, making it very user-friendly. It fits well, it doesn't rattle. You already mentioned it's quite large.
But it's just really, yeah, it's just if you look at it a bit more closely, it's clearly just bent down here one time, so I can really move it without any effort at all. What I also find nice again, even if you put it in here. So these rubber bands provide much needed stability. And on the side, if you touch it now, it's bent so it doesn't stick out awkwardly. Perhaps it's actually a stroke of luck, considering that with our 2 or 3 machines, it's relatively well aligned on every single one of them. If it stuck out a little, it would really be a point of criticism.
Yes, and it's very neatly folded. Exactly. The sharp edges are definitely not facing down.
That's just this small edge right here, which is a little bit tricky.
Front plate compared to back plate.
Right, they're easily broken, but you can repair them.
What really, since we're already at it, is actually a nice and convenient option is the external water tank. It is really, really practical because it allows you to set it up in a variety of different places depending on your needs. It is simply connected with a hose, so you can say, I want it to be at the back. Or maybe I want to have it on the left side, or maybe on the right, because the sink is closer there. If you lack enough depth, just move it to the side like this. And it's not caught in the machine. And visually, it's genuinely not a big problem at this moment either. That makes the machine just a bit less deep, which is really quite nice as well, adding to its overall appeal. Absolutely. This gained space, especially with a not so deep countertop, I find it simply a very smart option. And yeah, how long is the hose? How far can you typically move it away from the source?
You could, depending on the situation, position our hose right next to it, providing more flexibility and convenience. You'll simply need to check how your sink is positioned next to it. It fits next to it as well, just won't stand upright. You'd somehow need to put some kind of feet underneath to ensure it keeps the distance there properly.
But in principle, there's absolutely nothing against it. In principle, you could even extend the hose even further. So, right? Yeah. That's also an option worth considering. Michel, that's also a machine we could potentially set up in the bedroom.
Yes, yes. So with just a hair under 61 decibels, it's really quite something. Yeah, it's simply a rotary pump, cleanly processed, and nothing ever rattles. What's cleverly solved and quite nice is when you remove the cups from their designated holder. I do that with my machine quite often as well. I just remove the top grate and clean underneath it. This grid is designed so that...
Rubber bumpers.
Thingamabob. And it is because of that you are actually really able to...
Never heard a rattle because it's genuinely really well done. Yeah, you can certainly do that. It's truly good. So you can honestly, yeah, it's enjoyable and fun to use. Double manometer we have, and then the LCC, the Lily Control Center, which also provides us with a lot of different functions that we have the ability to control and manipulate to our liking, which we are very excited to talk about in just a moment. You've already announced or mentioned a few things, namely the flow rate on one side and the precise pressure control on the other. A pre-infusion, then of course an offset and so on, and another offset. We'll also talk about that and we'll get to it in just a moment, so stay tuned. And lastly, this Lelit portafilter you mentioned includes a bottomless one. But I also really like these ones here that look at us because then the espresso flows out so very nicely. That's of course not only nice in everyday life, but also much more beautiful to film.
So Ben, shall we go inside now and see what's in there?
Let's get down to the nitty-gritty now. We'll also take a detailed look at things later that we still find a bit critical. But first, I would say, let's take a look at what the machine can do, also in comparison to almost all other VMAI 61 brew groups, because Lelit really gives us the ability to control the flow rate in 2 different ways.
Right, we have the first level here. We have the classic VMAI 61 brew group with a thermosiphon system. That means the brewing unit is directly connected to the espresso boiler. And because that part heats up thoroughly and the water flows into the brew head through the top pipe, cools down again at the front, and then flows back into the espresso boiler from below. By heating, we warm this brew unit. It usually takes about 25 minutes depending on ambient temperature, usage frequency, and environmental conditions. Lelit did that with this version and the newer Mara X, so we have the espresso boiler and the heat exchanger. This ensures consistent coffee quality and reliability, providing an excellent brewing experience every time. So inside, really heat up the machine properly, give it full energy, and then let it gradually drop back down again to the lower temperature setting afterward. So first getting really hot and then cooling down gradually. And that approach works well because Thomas found out through numerous tests that he doesn't have to wait for 25 long minutes anymore. But that we already, after about 15 minutes or 17 minutes in the end, it was like this. 15 is really on the edge, but at 17, you're definitely in a much better spot where it's considerably more fun. That was like the final test where he said with 17 minutes, he could live with that. You get a good espresso out of it. Quick rinse, VMA typical, all wonderful.
Michelle, briefly, you mentioned talking about the VMA E61 brew group. We made a video on it that we will link. Check it out if you're more interested in the whole principle. So you can manually control the flow rate yourself to achieve better results.
Right, now up here we don't just have a cap with a screen and a giggler inside, but instead we actually now have a precisely adjustable and fully operational needle valve installed. The needle valve enables precise control over the flow directed to the brew head and shower, resulting in the optimal pressure needed for consistently excellent brewing performance every single time. That means you can manually run a flow profile, record yourself, or save it in your head for later, ensuring you can recreate the same settings next time for consistent results and a better brewing experience. I might start at the level, have as soon as I encounter resistance, later. For a few seconds, I can also clearly see just how much pressure that puts on my coffee. And then you can open it at different positions, each offering a unique experience.
What actually happens is, to give you quite a nice picture to illustrate, someone is standing on the hose. So whether you use your whole foot or just half, the hose eventually gets pinched off.
Exactly now. With the needle valve, you can also manually make the necessary adjustments to that by yourself. We found that with many machines we've looked at, not much happens at the back in default factory settings, which suggests there may be room for improvement or customization to enhance performance.
So basically, it's kind of similar to a person who's too heavy standing on the hose.
Exactly. And here, it's really just to hold it in place. It's really quite practical, almost nothing comes out at all. Now just imagine for a moment that you set it to about 6. With our specific machine, that actually resulted in a very slow and steady flow. That means we're somewhere around 1.5, nearly 2 milliliters per second, which is really very, very slow when you think about it, and this is without any help from the electronic control system.
We'll get to that soon. Let's stay here. All's open here, exactly.
However, please don't take that as a fixed reference value because it truly varies slightly from one machine to another. It's best to just try it out for yourself. Usually you're somewhere up front with a really reduced flow of between 1 and 2 milliliters per second, which can vary depending on conditions and the individual machine's performance. Actually really great for a classic coffee pre-wetting, which you can then leave for about 8, 10 or even as long as 12 seconds, all depending on the specific type of coffee you are using.
You can easily test this for yourselves by just taking a scale and observing what exactly comes out per second or what the result is over a period of 10 seconds. You can do this with a digital Bluetooth scale, input everything into the app. There are various ones for that, but you can also use a regular scale and see how much flows out in 10 seconds. And then you can calculate how much flow velocity you have there. Yeah, we can open it further.
And then we can open it further. And you can say, I'll just go ahead and open it fully now. Then you are at our machine, making it easier for the water to properly flow through the brew head. Of course, depending on the coffee once again, and depending on the brewing area, you're then at around 8.5 to 9 bars. Our pump typically reaches the level at 9.5. So the pressure loss up to the front is roughly around 1 bar.
And how about the flow rate itself again?
And the flow rate itself increases, so without any resistance, you're around plus or minus 6 to 7 milliliters per second in a fully open area. And of course, you have this intermediate range where the flow adjusts accordingly to the conditions. I would like to mention 2 points. The first point is what we have found out, whether you are like this now or maybe. Let's say half an hour later. That doesn't matter. The world out there, so you don't have to worry about it at all. You don't need to draw exact lines because you can try it out for yourself. These are very fine differences here. We had something like plus or minus 0.1 to 0.2 milliliters per second. That doesn't make a huge difference, meaning it doesn't significantly change the flow or the taste later on in the process. We'll have to discuss this whole topic further in much more detail, of course.
Let's stay on the possibilities level and see what the overall impact will be.
And then, of course, you also have an intermediate area. So one could then say we simply brew with 8 or 7.5 bars. Just make a strong effort to fix it. I always find that the aspect of reproducibility tends to be somewhat tricky here. I wouldn't really see this somewhere in between, but rather we actually tested it either fully, then at 9 o'clock or 3 o'clock, depending on how you interpret the clock. Or just completely open in all respects, without any adjustments needed. There's another difference. So fully open is not exactly at 12, but somewhere in between, around 10 more or less. And there's another difference here. You might want to experiment by placing it at a precise 90-degree angle or fully opening it to see which works best for you. That you have such fixed points allowing you to reproduce it consistently each time, that's the question we need to consider.
That's the question. And dear Michelle, that's also one of the major points of discussion we've frequently had in the past few years. When we talk about version 2 of the machine, which we haven't yet introduced here on the channel, one reason we didn't do it is that we hadn't thoroughly tested it yet to ensure it met our standards for quality and performance. Or rather, as I mentioned before, they also possess. From my personal perspective, this is quite overwhelmingly challenging indeed for someone who is genuinely just starting out in the espresso area. Constant. Always the same green, because you don't just have your grind size, you don't just have the coffee itself, which also changes, and all the other factors you have to consider with my espresso machine. But also constantly has a changing flow rate. And that is another essential parameter you need to take into serious consideration. In the end, with the model, when it wasn't fully wound up, it ensured people drove themselves crazy if the coffee didn't taste as it should have, leading to discussions about what went wrong and how to fix it.
Fix.
Now with V3, something's happening.
Right? Because with the V3, I would tell everyone who, let's say, is taking their first steps into the espresso world with Bianca, maybe having used something cheaper before, now something like, I'm now spending a good amount of money on her, and I have a solid mill next to me. I'm beginning now to experiment with brewing a wonderful espresso. Please go ahead and just leave that door open, because you guys have already talked a lot about the different aspects.
LCC. Or higher, the programming level below, exactly.
Stable, constant way to work with flow. If you want that, you also don't have to start right at the beginning. That is saved and simply reduces a potential source of error. For me, this is ball number 2 and that is ball number 1, and you usually start at 0, like without anything at all, no preset conditions or existing configurations.
Yes, exactly. So you can now program the flow rate in certain areas somewhat less flexibly than with the paddle, bringing the specific amount of water consistently each time from the machine side. This ensures steady and predictable operation, which is important for maintaining efficiency and accuracy, giving you peace of mind. You still need to check the grind size and tamp it properly because you can't do it as well anymore. Through the grind size and tamping, the forming resistance creates pressure, significantly altering what happens within the puck and influencing overall extraction quality. The water flows out faster, channeling happens quicker, and there are still many parameters to consider. However, this provides a solid, sensible, and very practical adjustment option that is beneficial for our entire process. Not like here you have some pre-infusion and there you have a bit of drying time, but we can actually make very small, precise adjustments or fine-tunings. Program a relatively low flow speed, and that becomes sensorically interesting in the cup afterward, creating delightful and nuanced flavors.
And that indeed has various layers to consider. Let's go through the menu together, step by step, to understand it fully. Of course, you have the option to set the brewing temperature. We'll get to how consistent it is later. You have the option to set the steam temperature. That's one specific adjustment level. And then you already move on to the next level, which is really the possibility of initiating this low flow start option. So, what does that actually mean for us? We have a precisely controlled needle valve that is situated just behind the brew group, and this functions in addition to the existing needle valve. This essentially means...
So previously.
Preceding, exactly. But that means if you happen to forget to set something here, it inevitably makes a change to that. That means when you begin experimenting, just leave it open to see what happens. You can actually override the other one with it, or maybe just consider reducing it once again if needed.
Don't overdo it, since you still have the pre-reduction of the flow rate to ensure smooth operation.
You can reduce it once more, but don't overdrive it, which describes the situation.
Exactly. But then you will have another reduction later on.
So we can go back again, but we can't increase. That won't work. So this low flow level means you can set it to 5, 8, 10, 12, or even 30 seconds, during which it maintains a steady low flow rate for the selected duration, ensuring optimal efficiency. was approximately plus or minus around 3.5 milliliters per second when the needle valve was fully and completely open. I find that very sensible. With many coffees like Apas or, for example, Doña Margarita, we had at 3.5 milliliters per second, we had complete cake saturation after 7 or 8 seconds with lighter coffees. Abbas was then around 6, netted once, and then you can basically say, okay, I'll do this for 7 seconds or for 8, and then let the complete flow through. Again, this 6.5 to 7 milliliters per second with the needle valve fully open, and then I go on to finish brewing the coffee as needed. This is the first level, so you can just check that one off. You can do it, and I find it really, really nice to experiment with because you can save it and come back to it later if needed. The machine just does that every time you lift the lever.
If you pull the lever up, exactly when you have it completely open here, so you need these two levels, you can basically switch over here and then pull the lever up. Then this happens. You can also have a permanent lever installed there and simply leave it in place. Then you can easily ignore it because you don't ever need it at that particular spot.
Right, so it continues now.
Yes, we can definitely open the play area later. But before you go in there, Misha, just a quick brief statement here. 2,000, 2,500 francs, 2,500 euros, depending on where you buy them. I know many machines that cost 7,000 or 8,000 francs. You have one of those at home, and it is far from having just any of these functions that more advanced machines offer. And that's quite a bold statement.
Is a bit older, but still viable today? I'm with you. Yes.
Just to note it down like that for now.
Yes, absolutely. So there's really...
Still selling, right?
We still need to see if it will eventually be replaced. First, something has to...
We are currently in the process. You can see something's happening. Michel, I interrupted you.
So, now imagine you have fixed that up, but now you have discovered another possible option to expand it even further. We do. Thomas really took a lot of time with it. We have about a digital manometer measuring flow or pressure at the front. We also showed that, again, for clarity and to enhance your understanding.
We use the smart profiler.
Right, we can show that again a little bit later, but then you'll also have access to the second level of pre-brewing, which is quite important. You can take full advantage of pre-infusion in combination with low flow or use it independently if you prefer. Pre-infusion means that we allocate a certain programmable amount of time for water to be applied to the coffee puck. Then the machine takes a pause, which means the pump really stops entirely, and then we can meticulously control this pause duration and can specifically say, hey, then we'll take a 5-second pause, pour water for 3 or 2 seconds, take a 10-second break, and then start brewing again to ensure the flavors are extracted perfectly. So the really exciting part is you actually have a mechanical start function that is activated by using that lever. That means this particular area, this thermosiphon, is indeed actually open. Mm-hmm. So the path between the boiler and the brew group, it's very much there. Mm-hmm. But then the pump stops. What's interesting here is that yes, because the path is still open, a tiny bit of water still comes out. So it's not a complete break, it's really more like just a tiny bit of water trickling out slowly. We are really under 1 milliliter per second. It's really very, very little that still goes onto the coffee. So it's quite an interesting approach to say, hey, I steam my coffee, just the top part, at full power for 2 seconds, then pause until 12 or so, before continuing with another burst of steam. Can even let the very first part run on low flow. And then continue brewing once more, even more thoroughly again.
So you can tell this is diving deep into the nerd territory, and it's covering a range of features that we really genuinely enjoy a lot. So it's really fun to experiment with it. It's always a bit of a shame with espresso. Yeah, after about 15 espressos in a row, your perception abilities unfortunately begin to gradually and noticeably decline over time. And then you're not exactly sure if you're having a big impact here. Michel, these are incredibly exciting possibilities. We will soon also brew some espresso and talk a bit about the taste. But you know, what is really important to me now with the machine, especially this combination with such a smart profiler with a scale, because otherwise I would often stay in a similar area, like programming but with a Bluetooth scale. And with the smart profiler, I can achieve levels close to high-end espresso machines, which are enjoyable and offer a satisfying experience similar to a decent machine. However, there is a crucial difference. While we do have a flow rate control here, we do not control the machine based on the effective flow rate. But essentially, we open it here and this much flow rate will then come through. But then it changes it changes due to the resistance that forms down here, And so the pressure changes and so on and so forth. With other machines, we can then say that I want the machine to artificially maintain a consistent flow rate at level X, regardless of any fluctuations. But that's a whole different price range to maybe open up or touch on this topic a little bit. Quite exciting. There are many interesting cars for it. Smart Profiler, there's another Bluetooth device you can just plug in here. You can replace the manual manometer, and that opens up great possibilities for us. Yes,
super, super exciting. So we have many more layers behind it where you can explore many functionalities. Super experimenting. You can create many different videos if you want, but you don't have to. And that's what I appreciate most about it. You can get more out of your cafe. You can experiment as much as you like, but the beauty is you don't have to. So essentially it's an open invitation. So we have manual flow control, a pressure gauge display showing the resulting pressure, which is very useful. We have the low flow option at the start, and additionally, we have several pre-infusion options available. And the last level we have, that's quickly explained, it's simply low flow at the very end of the process. That means with all this complexity involved, you could theoretically even say in the end, like from second, during a pre-infusion of 8 seconds, maybe starting from around second 25, I gradually reduce the flow rate again to achieve the desired result. And here electronically, the flow goes back to 3.5. And at the end, you have where often, especially with light coffee, we move quickly through the cake, take some power out, ease off the gas, and slowly finish extracting the coffee to ensure the delicate flavors develop and create a well-rounded experience. That's from the start point 25 until you manually stop. Manually stop. The machine doesn't do it automatically.
And Michel, this opens up a playing field for us, which then gives us so many possibilities to adjust an espresso differently than the classic way, for example, rotary pump or vibration pump, and ultimately you can say, this really lets you set up every espresso just perfectly. You might use 1 kilogram beforehand.
Yes, at the dumbest moment, yes. But I find it wonderful because it can be saved, and because it also, I find it really quite nice that it doesn't make much of a difference whether I make small changes or not in the signifier, that here, in this context, a sensory world truly opens up. And it is an invitation, it is a warm and friendly invitation to experiment, to try different things out without necessarily having to completely understand everything you are doing.
Michel, if you don't mind, I'd say, should we give each other a warm invitation for an espresso? Let's discuss the temperature. We still have a little more to mention, which is particularly important if you are interested in this machine. And we can then dive a bit more into the curves. We can try out a few things. Then we will froth some milk, and then we'll wrap this up here. Thank God that this coffee machine is unable to make filter coffee. Otherwise, this video would last for about an hour and a half, if not longer. But I'd say, let's move on and make espresso. How much are you making? 18.5 grams of coffee. "36 seconds.
42 grams.
I'm very excited. Shall we open a cup here? Yes, gladly. Look, we can place it on the water tank here. Michel.
Oui. Drink Doña Margarita.
Coffee grown on our family farm?
Exactly. Lovingly written on the bag, Lucid Dreams, personally by Tim.
That's what he called the fermentation profile, which is interesting.
Yeah. Coffee brewed with 18.5 grams in 42 out in 36 seconds with 8 seconds low flow. And that's coffee, maybe to say briefly, it has quite a distinctive acidity and you can brew it really badly. You have to fine-tune it a bit or it's better than before. I briefly considered pulling it a bit shorter and now it's become a bit longer again, like 2 seconds. I find it juicy now. I found the texture.
Just a little bit thicker and a little bit creamier. However, I still find the acidity now to be incredibly nicely juicy in such a beautiful and delightful way, don't you think?
And I especially find the aftertaste. It doesn't turn into that dry cocoa. He continues to stay on the nearly raisin-like, sweet and cocoa-like level overall.
It could truly be about anything, but it's entirely gone now. Really good coffee overall.
I still have, okay, so I'll take my last sip and then we can talk about what she's done now.
Because you didn't just make a regular espresso shot, but you actually set a particular profile instead. Did you open it up completely, start pulling, and happen to program anything specific beforehand by any chance?
I had programmed a low flow, nothing else, no V program, no low flow at the end, just low flow at the start. Can you pay attention 10 times?
That low?
Low flow, low flow, low flow, low flow, low flow, low flow, low flow. So it was 8 scuns and nothing else. So through that, I have extended the time overall a little bit and nothing more. So for a coffee I would drink with 28 or 29 seconds, I would be around 32 to 33 seconds. So in the end, we would end in a brew recipe with 1 to 1.25, no 1.225 to be really clear about it. When we tested, we thought, well, because I actually find the coffee at 2.5 not well, how to say, not too watery. That's the wrong word. But I like the density of this coffee. 1 to 2 would have been too complex for me in terms of acidity.
We've visualized the whole thing for you with the Bean Conqueror app. We've also added some of our coffees there. This is a truly great app developed by a German developer who is doing an amazing job, and it shows you even more details about what's actually happening in the shot. So you actually saw how much water came through or how much coffee actually ended up in the sieve or how much coffee actually ended up in the cup, and the app is even clever enough to try to calculate how much might be flowing through right now. One of the many interesting ways to visualize the entire brewing process was Bean Conqueror.
And for everyone who has the machine now and says, okay, I just have to try this, like this low flow, be aware that you'll definitely need to grind more finely and with more precision. So you need to go through this initial touch, this pre-wetting. Do you have the ability to grind more finely and thereby trigger more? And you need to grind a bit finer and can extend the extraction time slightly, drawing it out even more. And with fruity coffees, you will often get more texture and find an added clarity in the flavors, which makes the overall coffee experience richer and more satisfying. Acidity. And some coffees can be quite sharp. You just have to experiment a bit to see the result in the end.
We can grind finer overall than before. We also need to grind finer actually to increase the resistance. This option allows us to get higher extractions, more out of good coffee with optimal flavor and aroma, greatly enhancing your coffee experience each time. We wouldn't normally do that with lower quality coffees, but with good coffees, it's really a lot of fun to extract more from them.
If we see this as an invitation to experiment, that would indeed be the first step towards exploring new methods in coffee brewing and extraction, in my opinion. This isn't super complex. It doesn't have 1,000 parameters that you need to input. You just have this start. You can extend it to 10 seconds. Not shorter, as it usually takes 6, 7, or 8 seconds to soak the cakes properly, ensuring even absorption and the perfect texture. You definitely need that. Try it out for a longer period and see what happens with your graphics.
Michelle, now we're going to delve into another type of espresso extraction. But before we do that, we've just discussed the flow rate options, but that is just one level. Pressure is another level. Here, the pump actually always delivers the same pressure, and it does so, and it arrives accordingly, depending on how much flow rate we allow and how finely you then grind. We then have an effectively visible pressure, with the rotary pump always blasting out the same thing. But then we also have the level of temperature, right? And we should briefly talk about that before we then make the leap, connect the smart profiler, and pull another espresso.
When we talk about temperature, we're simultaneously talking about offset in all machines.
And also about the handover moment, how the machine actually arrives at your place, depending on where you buy it.
Right. We already told you before, please go to the store and take some time to actually touch and feel the machine. Please also make sure to buy them in the same store where you took the time to touch them, as this is absolutely crucial for us for an important and fundamental reason. And all Biancas we've thoroughly tested so far, and that was certainly well over 20 unique different individuals altogether. Is it truly possible for me to test a thematic offset in each and every course repeatedly? We do this in all courses. So if you come to the course with your machine and it was bought somewhere and you want to check the offset, we will do it together with you.
If you've already attended Michel's course and Michel has adjusted your temperature, then please write it in the comments. Exactly. Let's see if one or the other person responds. It really is a phenomenon, isn't it? You have to keep a very close eye on this machine's temperature to prevent potential overheating.
Absolutely, because the discrepancy between the actual temperature and the displayed temperature is at least 4 degrees, if not 5, and in the very worst case scenario, it might even be 8 degrees.
In the default setting, just as the machine arrives to you guys for the first time?
Because you really need to make adjustments there. That means you need to bring along a tool. There are various manufacturers, but the one we use is the gas, and the offset has to be set. With our machine, the one that's here, we had an offset, I think, of 6 degrees Celsius. That means at a displayed 93 degrees C, we were actually at 87 degrees C. And my goodness, you can pre-infuse as long as you want, but you won't get a tasty espresso within those temperatures where we roast coffee.
Michel, I just want to quickly jump in here. First, we are talking about the classic offset that we have on all machines. There is a second level of offset that we need to discuss shortly. Well, I genuinely believe that if you're truly confident in your sensory taste abilities, then it honestly doesn't really matter at all what others might think. If you just say, okay, I'll take a sip, oh, the brew was probably too cold, I need to increase the temperature. Then it doesn't matter if it reads 88 or 97. The problem, however, is when you buy a machine and maybe aren't super confident, and we all feel uncertain from time to time. I also feel uncertain, and then I ask myself, is it the temperature of the machine? Is it the coffee? What did I do wrong this time? And if then perhaps the temperature is set wrong, that really messes me up completely and makes it hard for me to focus. I think if you're really super safe, then you don't have to. And if you like the espresso, then you don't need to run to the next dealer with your Bianca and say, I bought them online, I think I've got the wrong temperature. Then you can cut what we're saying now. But not if you hear what you have to say, as it might bring a new perspective we need.
Right, because this difference is just so big. If I said that correctly, we have that with all machines. Normally it ranges somewhere between 2 and 4. Here, it often starts at 4. We have already meticulously measured Biancas from various locations in many different courses and consistently encountered an offset of at least 4 to 5 degrees in every single instance. Be aware of that, she simply just has it indeed.
There is a simple reason too. On one hand, it is poorly controlled. Then the machines are produced for different markets and different voltage levels also lead to varying temperatures. Later then in the cup and here, apparently there's not much differentiation between what goes to America and what goes to Europe. They have the desire to improve that, but we still haven't experienced it with the current machines just yet, so it simply is what it is for now in this situation.
But the offset issue actually has a second layer that we genuinely want to take the time to share with all of you.
Very briefly, we can adjust the offset here. A dealer can do that. It's not complicated, basically.
Basically, that's actually not part of the normal LCC control. That's something a dealer usually does, something that you could theoretically do yourself. But the level where you then go in, it's somewhat more complicated. You can indeed change many things that you probably really shouldn't be altering. That's why it should be done by traders. The danger of the regular menu arises from having another menu item with an offset, which can result in potential errors and complications if not carefully monitored. So the same word ends up being used for something else entirely, because Lelit understood that the Kaffeemacher brew group often tends to overheat, which in turn affects the overall coffee quality.
So everyone got it, but only a few actually do something with it?
Exactly. And you have the option to set the heating of the espresso boiler for a specific adjustable period. Or you actually set the degrees and the machine calculates the time on its own and turns off the espresso boiler's heating. We couldn't see any significant differences at that point in time. There's an idea behind it that's worth considering and exploring further in order to fully understand the nuances.
No, I mean, we aren't successful or it doesn't change anything.
Exactly, because she's really damn good.
That's another idea entirely, but the thing is just so incredibly static that this particular attempt to change the inertia of the brewing unit through this specific and precise setting really hasn't changed anything significant or noticeable at all. Nevertheless, I find it another example of what Lelit is actually trying to do, namely to explore, to try out, and to experiment. And my hat really feels right, which I think is genuinely and absolutely awesome. We didn't notice any big or significant differences at all when we played with this particular setting. And that did a little too much, Michel, but we actually have good temperature stability.
When it comes to regulating temperature, it truly shows what it can do. Once we set the offset, it's really a lot of fun. There she has a standard deviation of 0.7 in the BBC protocol. And in the Kaffeemacher protocol?
0.86.
80.
All right, just really briefly, we're actually looking at in regard to the first 3 seconds. We won't look at these, but we'll start from the 4th second until the 25th. One more second, and then we'll observe the difference. 0.7 is a very good value, and it perfectly meets the criteria for our current analysis. So, not just for VMA61 brew groups, but overall, this is a truly comparable, very good value. It just about barely fits the basics or the fundamental requirements necessary for a World Championship machine. Yes, so that's yet another compelling reason for you to tip your hat in admiration.
Absolutely, and just quickly touching on the offset topic here without having set anything up beforehand. Firstly, don't feel like you're actually triggering anything there. And secondly, don't confuse this with those specific 4, 5 to 8 degree offsets that we briefly mentioned earlier in the discussion. That's really a whole new level.
That was the temperature, and as we had already promised you, now let's go swimming together. Let's play another exciting round. We take the classic manometer and then replace it with the Smart Profiler, which is actually a manometer equipped with a Bluetooth interface. Attach an additional scale and then you'll clearly see what happens in the shot, providing a more detailed understanding. We will now visualize the exact same espresso shot we just made for you again, but this time we'll be making good use of an app to assist us. Hold it like this, then we have a better exercise. A scale, and here the Smart Profiler, which has replaced the manometer, now through a digital manometer that is connected, in this case with the app press sensor, and additionally we have also connected the scale from D-Fluid. And now you see the turquoise line here, which shows on one hand how much pressure we have at the top at that moment. Measure using the digital manometer, and on the other side you can see below the effective amount of coffee that we already have on this particular side.
Bang, right to the point. 36 as before.
Great. Michel, now we did the same exact thing once again, but this time we used the Smart Profiler tool just to clearly explain and show you what we just did. And to now help visualize what's happening here and to illustrate how it appears on the screen so you can easily follow along, and how we can effectively utilize the Smart Profiler in our setup. And now we are going to create the improved profile once again, where in addition to the precise electronic flow control, we also manually adjust and fine-tune the flow just a little bit, ensuring the best possible results by aligning the pedal in this way. And what exactly do we do for that, Michel?
We'll turn the grind just a tiny notch higher, really just a notch. It needs just a little bit more for the right consistency now. We extend the low flow range to 15 seconds. For these 15 seconds, we go to 6 o'clock with the pedal, and as soon as the full flow comes, we push the pedal all the way back, and then we'll see that we actually, on the profile, at the very moment when the pressure is at its absolute peak, coffee also comes out on the other side, which essentially means that the coffee was thoroughly saturated with water, and we leave it open but then set the end low flow again after approximately 35 seconds. That we relieve the pressure and start brewing for approximately 5, maybe 6, and even up to 40 seconds, adjusting as needed.
Michel, and why is this exciting and necessary? Firstly, the capture phase still has a bit too much oomph, even with the low flow electric, right? Adjusting it properly is essential for ensuring the process works smoothly and efficiently. And then, why do we slightly reduce the overall flow at the back again?
Because we, especially with light roasts, just have this puck resistance that decreases significantly during the brew. This essentially means that the water flows through the coffee puck very, very quickly during brewing. You all know this. When you brew normally, at first it might drip a bit and then it flows through relatively quickly. That's even more intense in the way we brew now, and that is precisely why we take the pressure and energy off the coffee once again, so that it flows out very slowly, steadily and smoothly, and doesn't shoot out abruptly or in an aggressive manner.
It's just so much fun. It's really, really hard green, but it's also not necessarily better in most cases overall.
What did we do again? 4 more brews, just because it was cool at the moment. What's exciting is...
We've already got a few intros in today.
Yes, we have too much coffee. We're going to need the cappuccino later. But I find it super exciting that you can turn a coffee predestined by its meticulous processing with its rich dark fruit character now fully towards a more complex and amazing flavor experience. Fully on sweetness, also a lot of texture. You can focus and actually change this flavor of dark fruits fully into the raspberry.
All right, so that's what's happening with this coffee. So you can't just go ahead and make the coffee because Michel now says then you'll have raspberry afterwards. What's happening with this coffee now? This is because we've been messing around with it. Of course, you can certainly also brew the nutty chocolate coffee with it and then experiment a bit with it. Everything is possible. Let the machine do it.
Simply go ahead and do that again.
So cute.
Dude, unbelievable. Super cool what we've just achieved. This is so much fun. I think to summarize once more, I think you all already noticed the video is a bit nerdy because the machine allows it. Breaking it down once more, you can already take a step with the fixed profiles, pull out certain things, focus on various aspects somewhere in the low floor range, or perhaps even play around with the projection settings to achieve different results. That's also a lot of fun. And we have now actually just reduced the flow, the 3.5 to 4 milliliters per second of the low flow, a bit more. With our machine, the needle valve was set in the half position, plus or minus. And at the very beginning, there was approximately 1 to 1.5, so really relatively little water was on it, to be honest. And then it naturally takes time, and that's why the 15 seconds, until we really had the whole cake in contact with water. Then actually proceed with starting the brewing process. Do you know it's going to be an awesome cappuccino?
Fine.
Going well. Nice rolling phase. Turns remarkably well. I'm more into accurate and deliberate positioning. Precision because I don't want it to swim too much or air excessively here, but I prefer the rotation to be nice and smooth in the can. I'm already cold.
Michel, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Today, you've really outdone yourself here.
Do you know why? We got delicious milk.
Tasty milk, without a doubt, not UHT. Did the machine contribute majorly to that, or was that more of an incidental byproduct?
It definitely has plenty of power, no question about it. If I remember correctly, we've had 4 machines now, each equipped with a new measurement product. For the steam performance, offering a bit more context on how quickly it heats up and maintains its temperature over time. We take 200 grams of water, add no foam to it, and heat it to 60 degrees and see how long that takes to get a reference value, because we found out when you add air to milk taken from the fridge at a temperature of around 6 degrees, you're more or less at the same value, maybe 5 seconds less, but that's just a very simple and straightforward reference point for us. The machine takes 47 seconds to reach 60 degrees, typical for smaller dual boiler setups in home espresso machines, ensuring consistent performance for coffee enthusiasts.
Sounds slow to me at first because it means I'll be foaming for at least that time, which seems long.
Right. So it really takes some time. I was probably around 40 seconds, maybe 42 or so. So it is like this period, it is often just about 5 seconds. Is it longer than effectively the milk? But there's like a reference point, and the milk isn't exactly 5 degrees either. I would say it was definitely around 10, so give or take, like starting temperature. And I am a cold frother. I admit it openly and honestly, I foam up to 55. I prefer it when it's cold.
So I actually like it now as well. Actually, I have to tell you, this coffee with milk, with some really good milk, is truly quite delicious indeed. For me, it definitely has a slightly cherry-like aftertaste to it. And licorice, I find it absolutely fascinating.
I was more into milk chocolate because I don't like licorice. So the memory wasn't really there.
You might want to try again once more.
Maybe I need to try one more time. She's over, and we're currently operating at the maximum power level, which is set at 135 degrees Celsius. She has more than enough pressure right now to make a perfectly clean rolling phase. No discussion, it froths just fine. It has a relatively quick heating process, and I wouldn't say it's slow, but for a normal home machine range, it's definitely in the solid middle ground. With this, you also have more time for frothing, which is really quite great for all beginners who are just starting out with this particular machine. No question about it, it's a lot of fun to use. You have a dual boiler, which means you can pull espresso and froth milk simultaneously without any problems whatsoever. Absolutely no issue, it's all totally and completely decoupled, offering a seamless experience.
That doesn't do anything at all. At the same time, you don't have to turn on the steam boiler. An important and nice feature, you can completely turn off the steam boiler. The steam boiler is not responsible, for instance, for raising and maintaining the brewing temperature. And that definitely has some quite clear effects, such as significantly lower overall power consumption. And we can quickly mention a few additional things about that, since it's really quite okay. Yes?
Absolutely. It consumes 0.42 kilowatt hours for making 5 coffee brews, with a steam boiler ensuring perfect brewing temperature.
Plus heating.
Plus heating up, plus these 5 different tests, that adds roughly around, I'd say about half again as much time and effort compared to what you get with the classic 2-circuit systems.
Yes, and seen a lot. So that matters a lot now. Between 0.4 and 0.55, many Dougal boilers behave relatively similarly. But what is truly spectacular, or already very good, is that if we turn off the steam boiler, warm it up again, and then make 5 shots, we end up getting a significantly better value.
Then we eventually end up finding ourselves arriving at an approximate total value of 0.13 kilowatt hours.
That's what it is. The Sylvia Pro X was also about there, I think. And then at 0.1, we're with the thermal blocks. So we have to say, a rather decent value, really.
After a quarter, so after 17 minutes hot.
Of course, that also plays a role. What's really interesting and shouldn't be underestimated, the machines, of course, possess their own certain temperature. They actually manage to maintain it quite well and consistently. So you don't really need to reheat much. We should definitely mention the standby function, which significantly helps in saving energy and enhancing efficiency. This is programmed for 30 minutes. I think that's a bit tight, considering 15-20 minutes of heating time, and then it essentially shuts off after 30 minutes. Yeah. You need to know that.
What you need to know is you can turn it on and off super easily as well. That means you turn the machine off, lift the lever, push the button, and turn it back on. When it blinks, it's on. If the light stays steady by the power button after repeating the action, it shows the machine is ready and working properly. Then it's turned off once more completely.
And that brings us to the final conclusion for the Lelit Bianca V3. And I must say there's certainly a lot written down on the paper in front of me. And not just on paper, the machine actually can accomplish a great deal. Yeah.
Absolutely. So for me, that's pretty much the only thing. What I would wish for is simply that in metal processing or in bending steel, it would be a bit more high quality, a bit thicker. I am definitely all in on the black or the white colored models. Naturally, the wood here is not considered super high quality and all. Anyone can tell that immediately, but there's just an incredible amount packed into this complex machine. You have the option to experiment, but it's certainly not something you must do. More importantly, you can start in a beginner's area where there is no risk of making undrinkable coffee, making it a stress-free way to learn. But where you don't brew undrinkable coffee per se if you make a mistake once.
How do you mean by that? If you make a mistake, the coffee doesn't taste good anymore.
Yes, but the reproducibility through the storability for good shots increases the likelihood of making good coffee. That's how it was.
Yes, so I think the build quality is really completely fine. For other machines, I'd complain much more than this.
Yes.
Even in the higher price range. And yes, what the machine simply offers us in terms of possibilities to make good coffee. That's absolutely sensational. There's no need to beat around the bush at all. That's truly and incredibly awesome. It's really so much fun. There are hardly any boundaries to what you can do. The boundaries are, what other machines are out there. I already mentioned one today which can do a bit more and a bit differently. But otherwise, that's really quite amazing indeed. In this specific price range, everything is so solid and also functioning extremely well. And again, I have to say, we tested a Lelit Mara. We had a lot of nice, exciting things to explore there. Tested a Lelit Elizabeth, had to say, holy moly, super exciting entry-level dual boiler espresso machine. Costs another 1,000 francs, 1,000 euros less. We'll link the video right above for you. Also, it's an interesting machine to check out, and even with this Lelit, it often truly goes the extra mile. And it's not just since Lelit became integrated into a big company, but these are a few dedicated individuals who genuinely want to further develop tried and tested reliable technology. And I can say that with ease. So we have nothing to do with the Lelita at all. We just had a conversation. And I'm excited that someone is experimenting, also bringing a bit of momentum to the market. And we can see that here on the machine simply. And the result is really good.
And now imagine there will eventually be version 5 with volumetric capabilities.
Yes, that was my wish just now. So you said there's not much to criticize. And we also have to say, of course, offset. It's a topic we've mentioned a workaround to you before. So just check where you buy the machine. Other than that, most things are good. And that would truly be my wish. If we could already start getting into the low flow now, you mentioned it dribbles then, so even if we turn off the pump entirely, there's still a bit of residual flow speed that remains. If we can indeed instruct the machine now, close it securely for me, and that, my friends, would be the end of the story. All right, then you need to stand fully on the hose to be able to snap the picture again. Then, for me personally, it's truly the optimum in that entire price range.
I really picture removing the lever once. Of course, the Fimer Brewing Group stays, and then just 2 reference buttons would be enough, and a solid flow meter, hopefully in the hot water range, and hopefully in a way that it is constant.
Great overall package that the Lelit Bianca V3 brings to the table. And yes, I'm really excited to keep playing with it in the future and show you guys a bit more of what's truly possible with such an impressive machine and setup, especially in different scenarios. What is possible with carts? What is possible with flow velocity profiles? We can definitely tackle these areas for the fall season. Plus, we have a few specialized machines up our sleeve to help guide us in this direction more efficiently. I'm genuinely excited to dive deeper into all of that. Thank you all for watching so far. Thanks for following us, for subscribing to the channel or recommending it to others. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. We'll keep going, and until then, make sure to drink some good coffee. See you all very soon. We'll talk. The world outside will end before that happens.
Anyway, we have our lunch break now.
Good.